I'm Tenitra Batiste, and guess what, guys? Kevin Stefanski is in the building, but is he building a staff that's built for the postseason?
I'm Maria Martin, and I know there's some reservations about Kevin Stefanski from this fan base, but guys, we got to get on board because he's the coach, whether we like it or not.
I'm Aaron Freeman, and Kevin Stefanski will be just fine if they can eventually figure out the quarterback situation.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and Kevin Stefanski is used to dealing with dumpster fire quarterback situations.
ATL! ATL! Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
To the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis, and 11 Alive anchor Maria Martin. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So Brick is back. We'll discuss if it's a good look and who's the guy who's best suited to head up the front office. We'll debate that as well. Also, we may be saying hello again to the DC, but we're saying farewell, but he's not going too far. Is that a good look for the OC, the former OC for the Falcons? We'll download on it. But first, let's talk about the man the Falcons think will lead them back to the promised land. The Atlanta Falcons have hired former Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski as their 20th head coach for the franchise. And Jarvis, do you think Stefanski's the right guy to get this team from performing below expectations of getting to the postseason to getting back to the playoffs?
He has to be. That's how I look at it, because when I heard the news that he was going to be the guy, and I kind of figured he was going to be the guy because I know a lot of people were hot and heavy on Clint Kubiak, and I kind of understand that, right? Because that Seattle team looked like they're gonna win a Super Bowl, maybe, possibly, in his second year. Mike McDonald as a head coach. But I think that when you look at what Clint Kubiak did, he would have been another first-time head coach, and that probably the type of hire that Arthur Blank would have made, right? If Matt Ryan was in the fold. And I think that Matt was very clear as to what they were looking for in their next head coach. And I think that's why I feel like he had pinpointed who the guy was going to be. So I feel like offensive-minded guy, a guy who has some experience, a guy who has taken teams to the playoffs, right? Like nobody wants to seem to point that out. So I feel like he has to be, and I'm coming around on feeling like he can be personal.
Yeah. And you make a good point, Jarvis. Like, I think the biggest concern is, I don't think it's so much that nobody talks about it, but I think it's more of, it's almost like the primacy versus recency effect, right? So primacy being that's where he started, so to speak, towards the beginning of his time with the Cleveland Browns, but towards the end, it looked a bit different. So I think that's where most people's concerns lie. Like I said last week, will the real Kevin Stefanski please stand up? And we don't know yet and won't know until the season actually goes forth. But Maria, you also made a great point in your opening to say, hey, at the end of the day, we're here. He is the head coach. And so people, you got to get on board and get behind him, because that's the direction. He's the guy who's going to hopefully move this team forward. But that said, when you look at the last 8 years and the thought of Arthur Smith being the one, Raheem Morris being the one, and at the back end, understanding Dan Quinn was not the one anymore, but you kind of took a minute to move on. Do you think Stefanski's the right guy to get this team from performing below expectations, like I just mentioned, to getting back to the postseason?
I mean, you got to hope so, right? And one of the things that I want people to remember, especially when you talk about, Jarvis brought him up, Clint Kubiak, let's put a hypothetical out there and say the Falcons really did want Clint Kubiak. Well, you're waiting until potentially after the Super Bowl to hire somebody like that. And let's say you wait all that time and he changes his mind, or it's not a good fit, or, he chooses to go somewhere else. And then what do? You've passed up on somebody who does have head coaching experience, talking about the now head coach, obviously, and Kevin Stefanski. And there are some other names out there that are very viable options as well. So for those of you that were very excited about Clint Kubiak, totally understand his offense is clicking on all cylinders. It's very fun to watch. And I think he's going to be a good head coach wherever he lands. But the timing of it didn't make a lot of sense to me from a Falcons standpoint, just in the sense that the Seahawks are rolling and you'd have to wait a really long time and just kind of hope it works out. The Falcons have already dealt with a lot of high risk, high reward situations. And for everybody that was so fired up about Matt Ryan becoming the president of football, have trust in that he made this decision because he believes that Kevin Stefanski can take the Falcons to the next level. And look, we've seen what coaches do when they leave Cleveland. They have a lot of success. And we've talked about it before. Bill Belichick, when he left Cleveland, he was a losing coach in Cleveland and went on to become one of the greatest to ever do it. And so I think it's important to remember that Cleveland has a lot of issues within their franchise and organization that we don't really even know the whole breadth of, but even though it's been very well documented, this is a team that's won a playoff game or two in the last 30 years. They're not good and they haven't been good. So I think also to remember when Raheem Morris was hired back by the Falcons to be the head coach, you look back at his previous head coaching record in Tampa, albeit it was a decade before, but it wasn't great. And people were like, oh yes, this is perfect. There really isn't that big of a difference in this scenario. And I think if you're really going to go for a guy that is keeping Jeff Ulbrich around, which I know we'll talk about, which is important, and then bringing in some offensive pieces that I think are going to take this team to the next level, it's got to be the right fit.
Yeah. And I think emphasis on it has to be the right fit. Like this has to work, Aaron. For you, when you look at the hire of Kevin Stefanski, and Maria made a great point, maybe one of the factors is you do look at timing as everything. Matt Ryan, and you got to figure things out, although Sean McDermott. But anyway, you think about the fact that maybe you didn't want to wait to see how things were going to play out with Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills. You didn't want to wait and take the chance that maybe someone scooped up Clint Kubiak once the Seattle Seahawks were finished with their postseason run. So Kevin Stefanski was still a guy who was maybe in your 1A, your 1B, or your 2A, or your 2B. So why not pull the trigger with a guy that Matt Ryan is confident in? But are you confident in Kevin Stefanski?
Well, T, you always ask these questions, and I always give the answer. I'm never confident in anything the Atlanta Falcons do.
And that's why I always pose it slightly differently to you, because I just kind of like the way you answer. But go on.
But yes, as a Falcon fan for 35 years, I've seen the ups and downs with this football team, and it's hard to be confident with the moves that they've made because, you just look at their history and it's like there are positives, there are negatives, but it rarely always seems to kind of work out in the ways that the Falcons envision. I think Stefanski was the safe choice. I think the Falcons, getting spurned by John Harbaugh, I think they were basically, we don't want to necessarily get spurned again. And so let's pivot to our plan B. Let's go all in on our plan B. And then obviously Sean McDermott gets fired. Maybe things would have worked out differently if Mike Tomlin had been looking interested into coaching this year, as various reports indicate that he's not necessarily doing that as well. Things may have looked differently if Seattle wasn't necessarily a favorite to go out there and win the NFC like there, and Clint Kubiak could have been available this past weekend if they had gotten eliminated by the 49ers. So a lot of variables could have changed how the Falcons approached it, but I think the Falcons basically were like, we feel like Kevin Stefanski is a solid choice. I think that's basically the best thing you can say. As everybody has pointed out, he's had success in Cleveland, which is a hard place to have success, a harder place to have success than Atlanta is. But at the same time, he also seemed to fall trap to all the things that every Cleveland coach always falls trap to. And so, as you said, T, what's the real version of Kevin Stefanski? And I think when you look at it, for the most part, I feel like the narrative is that Cleveland roster got worse as he stayed there. And you saw diminishing returns on the performance of that team over time. The hope is this Falcons roster, and the expectation is a lot better than the old roster that he ended up with Cleveland in. The question, of course, is going to be, where does it stack up against the roster that he necessarily inherited early on in Cleveland when he had success? But obviously, I would argue, I think most people would agree with me on this, that is probably a little easier to win the NFC South today with that caliber of roster than necessarily the AFC North a couple of years ago. So I think there's all the reasons to be optimistic that Kevin Stefanski is the right answer, but I think so much of it is just going to depend on the Falcons. And when we talk later about who's going to be the GM, that person coming in and building a roster that is sustainably successful, which is something that I don't think Andrew Berry, the GM in Cleveland, did. That's going to be a big box to check. And we obviously know a big part of consistency in this league is having a quality quarterback. And that's been an issue and a bugaboo for the Falcons for the last 5+ years, basically since Matt Ryan's departure. And so if they can get that issue resolved, then I think Kevin Stefanski could have a lot of success. So it's hard to sit here and say Kevin Stefanski in isolation is going to solve the Falcons' problems. It's like, well, you got to keep drafting. Well, you got to figure out the quarterback situation. You got to continue to build up the defense. And if they can do all those things, I think Kevin Stefanski will be successful. But if they don't do all those things, then I think you're going to continue to see the sort of middling, mediocre, underwhelming results that we've seen from the Atlanta Falcons the last 8 years.
Yeah, and you better hope that a very feisty Baker Mayfield does not show up in those two Falcons Buccaneers matchups come 2026 later on this year. That said, Stafanski is now, Jarvis, starting to round out his coaching staff. He's hired Tommy Rees as the offensive coordinator. Do you think hiring his former Browns OC was the right hire for this offense?
No, not really. Because here's why I say it. It's because Kevin Stefanski gave up his play calling duties week 10 last year, and Tommy Rees took over play calling duties. And if you just look at the offense for that entire year, it was abysmal. Now you can credit some of that to not having any talent, quarterback situation, the round table of guys they were running through there, and whoever was available was the guy that was going to play on Sundays. Yeah, that's a factor. And I think that he's an inexperienced guy, right? Calling plays. I know he called plays in college, but as far as he got his first taste of calling plays in the NFL just a year ago.
Yeah.
Why did Raheem Moore get fired? Well, one part is hiring his assistants. He made a mistake from day one. He hired 2 first-time play callers, and that is an absolute no-no. I don't care how good of a coach you are, especially when you have expectations again to the postseason. What did we talk about earlier? Like, if Kevin Stefanski is coming in here to go 9-8 and barely miss the playoffs, which could potentially win the NFC South. But if you're around that middling 8-9, 9-8, yeah, y'all could have kept Rob for that. So I really feel like this might be a situation where Kevin Stefanski is hiring the OC so he can help out with the game plans and all that stuff. And then he's calling plays on Sundays. That's my hope. So, but to ask me if he's the right guy, I don't necessarily feel like that. If it's a possibility of him being the sole play caller, no, it's not the right guy.
Yeah. He, of course, was the tight ends coach, Maria, before he took over play calling duties for OC with the Browns, with Kevin Stefanski, now joining the Falcons as the OC. But when you look at the offense that the Falcons have in place as it stands, because we think for the most part that's going to be the offense they run it back with, maybe except for the receiving room. But ultimately speaking, you have the same offense that you had on the field in 2025. Is Rees the right fit?
I'm not sure it is such a cop-out answer, but it's true. Given everything that Jarvis kind of just illustrated as well. But I think the difference between Tommy Rees being hired by Kevin Stefanski and whatever Raheem Morris did with his offensive coordinator, which we know that Z-Rob didn't have any experience calling plays at any level, which to jump right into that, regardless of where you're at, it's a very difficult thing to do and to try to learn on the fly. I know we'll talk about Z-Rob later, but Kevin Stefanski has his hands more on the offense than Raheem Morris would have. And so that's where I feel like it is slightly different. Like you said, to whether or not it's Kevin calling the plays or Tommy calling the plays, we're going to probably find that out on Tuesday when we talk to Kevin Stefanski if he wants to unveil that this early. I don't know. But I think that he has a little bit more control of what they're doing offensively. So that's not to say the offensive coordinator position is not important. It's obviously critical in whatever you do. But when you have an offensive-minded head coach, it takes that pressure off of the OC just a little bit more. So me saying I don't know does have to do a little bit with his inexperience, but he has more experience calling plays than Z-Rob ever did, even though Tommy and I are the same age. He's 33. So I know that, across the league, everyone thinks he's a young, bright offensive mind. I don't think we've been able to see really what that means. That's really the consensus by a lot of head coaches and coaches in general in the National Football League is Tommy is an up-and-comer. He's a bright star. He's potentially going to be a head coach someday. That's great. But what we saw in Cleveland really doesn't indicate that at all. So I think I'm very interested to see what happens when he gets infiltrated into a system that's a little bit more stable. And like you said, T, aside from the wide receiver room, pretty much very similar to what they had last year.
Yeah. And we all, I think, Aaron, if you want to answer with a not like Maria said, a not answer, but an answer, that's okay. That's okay, because I think this one is one of those where you really do, even more so than Kevin Stefanski, the Tommy Rees hire is really a wait and see situation because, tight ends coach. Yeah, you took over as OC. But we know what that offense kind of looked like in Cleveland. What can you do with an offense like this, if anything? So I don't know. Whatever your thoughts are on Tommy Rees as OC.
Yeah, I think everybody nailed it. Where it's like there's some things that you look at, you're like, okay, I can see the vision, and then some things like I don't know. And I think Maria nailed it when she said the subtle differences between Zack Robinson coming to Atlanta versus Tommy Rees, who has play calling experience. But I think part of it is the young, hot, up and coming OC. We heard that 2 years ago, and we're like, we'll believe it when we see it, right? I think
we've been conditioned to believe it when we see it.
That part, JD.
We have no choice. Born in it,
and so I think the one thing that gives me some optimism with Tommy Rees is that Nick Saban was like, that guy is an up and comer, and in his final season at Alabama, he designated Tommy Rees to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama. Now, you hear people talk about that year in Alabama, and they're like, it wasn't that impressive. But what I've learned over the years, T, is no fan base likes their play caller. None. There's not a single offensive coordinator that has a high approval rating within their own fan base. So it's hard to really take fans' word for it when it comes to if this guy's a good play caller, because every fan base hates their play caller. So I can't put too much on that. But the fact that Nick Saban has a very, very storied history of being able to identify coaching talent, that he basically said, this Tommy Rees guy is an up-and-comer. That, to me, means something. Again, does that mean that he's going to produce a top 10 offense in the NFL this upcoming season or whatever? We'll see. But that at least gives me a little bit of optimism. But because of all the other factors that Jarvis and Maria laid out, certainly you start off a little bit more skeptical than normal.
Indeed. And real quick, thumbs up or thumbs down, JD, Maria, Aaron, on bringing in Bill Callahan to coach the O-line.
I love me some Dwayne Letford, but Bill Callahan is one of the greatest offensive line coaches that ever coached in the NFL.
Yeah.
Aaron, you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, and I would agree as well. I think it's a 4 for 4 because listen, this show, we love Dwayne Letford and what he was able to do, but it's one of those things where if you could get 1B and 1A, what you going with? You go with 1A. And that's a great opportunity as well because man, if you can get that O-line all the way together, if we thought we saw magic from Bijan Robinson this past season, think about what it might look like if that O-line gets right. So Brick is back, which means the D-line and the defense is going to be, possibly even greater in 2026. We'll discuss if that was a good look and if these guys agree that bringing him back was the right call. We'll take that under further review. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Your sports knowledge is what you can use in the moments that matter. And Robinhood prediction markets, it changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the US. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. This episode of our Falcon Squad show is also brought to you by Game Time. NFL season, the postseason is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. Crowd noise, energy, cheering alongside other fans. Watching it at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. So you can pull up the Game Time app to check out upcoming NFL games, like some big matchups this weekend in the NFL. Boy, oh boy, Patriots, Broncos kind of come to mind, and you can find great ticket options almost instantly. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes, which, man, you might need to get that last minute ticket to go up and check out the Seahawks and the Rams. And one of your favorite features is going to be having the ability to see the view from your seat. And you can do that before buying. No surprises whatsoever. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. Ooh, let's see if we can not be tongue-tied on this one, Maria. Arthur Blank mentioned in the press conference that he would like Jeff Ulbrich to remain on staff as defensive coordinator. Well, he got his wish because the Falcons announced that they would indeed be retaining Jeff Ulbrich as the DC. How important was it for Stafanski to keep Rick around?
You asked us to give thumbs up for Bill Callahan. I'm going to give 2 thumbs up to keep
I'm with you, girl.
Jeff Ulbrich. 100%. I think this was such a good move. You know, Arthur Blank had suggested that whoever comes in keeps him. I would have been like, hey, suggestion, but you better do it, because I think it's so important to keep not only a guy like Brick around, but just based off of what he did and how young this defense is and how they're just scratching the surface. To rip their coordinator out from under them would just be going backwards. And for an organization who feels like they're taking a step forward, that would be 1 step forward, 2 steps back, in my opinion. I mean, you get guys that, you know, to Terry Fontenot's credit, that you drafted in here, 10.5 sacks in his rookie season, James Pierce Jr., who we all thought would be such a critical piece to that defense. That is just the beginning for a player like that. And same with Jalen Walker, same with some of these other young pieces, Xavier Watts, same thing. And now you have continuity on that side of the ball. That is so special for a defensive side of the ball that for years we were saying just was discombobulated, wasn't getting it done, wasn't getting after the quarterback, you name it. We can go down the list. Finally, you get somebody in here who has resonated with these players in a very different way and shown a lot of versatility when it comes to defensive play calling and everything that his vision is. It seems very clear. So I think 2 thumbs up. If I could give it 4, I would. I think this was one of the smartest moves that Kevin Stefanski could make in his first days as a head coach.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think back to Arthur Smith making, I think the best move he ever made, the best decision he ever made was to bring in Dean Pease. And we think about how that defense, you can argue, overachieved, Aaron, but then they did it 2 years in a row. And then you saw Ryan Nielsen really kind of getting head of steam, and they only had him for 1 year. So you look at, Dean Pease and what he was able to do and you look at Ryan Nielsen and what he was able to do. But more importantly, I think Dean Pease with the continuity piece that Maria just mentioned, especially for those young players, we know they can be kind of mercurial. So if you can get a guy who can get their attention and who can get them to play at their highest level, while at the same time getting veterans to also stay on their game, yeah, I think it's an excellent look that Kevin Stefanski decided that it was best to keep Jeff Ulbrich around.
Yeah, it's about continuity. It's about stability. The Falcons have had 7 different defensive coordinators over their 8 years that they've been out of the playoffs. And it's been really hard for this team to build continuity, build stability, because they're changing schemes basically every year.
Yep.
And certain players, the really good ones are able to transcend scheme and work in any system. But when you have a bunch of young players that aren't at that level yet, it's really hard to kind of make those transitions and be able to continue that upward trajectory. And you get these sort of stop and starts. And I think particularly with some of the young pieces that the Falcons added this particular last draft class with James Pierce and Jalen Walker, like I think they were really good fits in the style of defense that Jeff Ulbrich wanted to play, with this sort of wide 9, trying to use their speed to get upfield and be that aggressive, disruptive defense with Nate Ollie and all them. And it would have probably looked a lot different had they hired another coach that may have ran a 4-3 or whatever. But, like Ryan Nielsen, we saw, he wants big old 270-pound DNs that can, set the edge and hold the point of attack with some of the lighter boxes that he's going to play with. And that's not really what James Pierce and Jalen Walker particularly do, although Jalen Walker does a decent job holding the edge for 245-pound edge.
Hey,
Healthy, absolutely.
Slow down now. Come on.
Yeah. I knew I had to check myself with any sort of Jalen Walker slander here.
Yes.
Stand for that, sir.
So I think this is a good move for these young players that presumably, we'll see how it goes, because, things don't always work out the way that you want them to work out, especially when it's the Atlanta Falcons. But, you assume that Jeff Ulbrich is going to be here for a couple more years, right? Maybe he gets a head coaching job. Maybe something goes wrong. But now, at least if we're assuming that Kevin Stefanski is going to be here for at least 3 years, Jeff Ulbrich's going to be here for at least 3 years, these young players, particularly in this 2025 draft class, should be able to stay in the same system for all 4 years of their rookie contract. And that hopefully will maximize their chances of being the potential home runs that we all think they have the potential to be, and be fixtures for this defense for many, many years to come, and hopefully bring in a new era of Falcons football that we just really haven't seen consistently over the last 2 decades, which is a team that can win with good defense. Like, I don't know, just saying those words in the Atlanta Falcons in the same sentence it feels so weird to say, but that potentially is on the horizon. And so I think that's why being able to retain someone like Jeff Ulbrich is a really, really good move for the Falcons that could really pay off for them in the long term.
And Jarvis, I know you were also a big proponent of this team retaining Jeff.
Absolutely, because when you think about the mindset that you bring to the table, he's a former player, so being able to relate to guys is automatic, right? Like you just feel what Jeff Ulbrich was doing, and because he's just such a genuine guy, he's so authentic. He tells he's a straight shooter, and that's what these players appreciate wholeheartedly. A lot of people think that these guys get coddled and all this stuff, and they've been told they're great, smoke get blown up their behinds all their lives and all that stuff. Nah, that changes when you get to the NFL for the most part, because it's about the money, and you got to produce. And if you're not producing, you're going to get told that you're not producing from the good ones. And I think that Jeff falls right there in that category. But what I'm really hoping, T?
Yeah.
Like
for Nate Ollie to stay?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You know me so well. We got to keep going.
If Jarvis could go up to Flowery Branch every day and hold up a sign right in front of the headquarters, Nate Ollie, he would do it.
That's the only that I actually like. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
hey man, watch him out. Now I was with you.
Hey.
Watch him out, man.
I love the food.
Make sure you don't pull up if you don't like it like that. Make sure you don't pull up.
I'm coming.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. All right. Just checking. Yeah.
You know
Because
I'm
no
saying?
NO slander will
that
be
I got on
tolerated.
Bourbon Street too. I'm snatch that down.
No NO slander will be tolerated.
but back to my original thought.
Your original NO point.
Yes,
Yes,
off track.
Nate Ollie. Yes.
Yes. But yes, I hope he's able to retain Nate Ollie. They're saying that was some reports that some outside interest, which y'all gonna like, he has to be, it has to be a promotion in order for the Falcons to even allow him to even interview for another spot. So I'm not quite sure what that report was. It was very generic, but hopefully Brick can convince him to stick around and continue to develop these young guys. Like Free said, like continuity is great, right? Because think about it. Bijan Robinson is going to be on his third head coach, and he's still on his rookie contract.
It's crazy. That's
continuity
crazy.
matters.
Yeah,
it really matters. So yeah, I this is great for the Atlanta Falcons and the future of this defense.
I agree. And going back to Jeff Ulbrich, this is the first time since 1980 that there was even a legit defensive rookie of the year candidate in James Pierce Jr., right? And when we look at the progression of James Pierce Jr., you got to look at Jeff Ulbrich and say, hey, shout out to you for what you and your staff have been able to do to help develop a guy like that, right? And you got to look at Nate Ollie and say, hey, what this D-line was able to do, you got to give him credit for that. And even Jalen Walker, a little bit up and down, but obviously because he was dealing with that hammy, that kind of, no pun intended, hamstrung him. And we didn't see maybe the best out of him all 17 games because, well, we couldn't. But yeah, the historic run of this defense, the sacks that everybody was clamoring for that you hadn't seen in forever, all of those things were happening. We started seeing these players get home. I think we started seeing the discipline remember, I think last year we would always say, like, just tackle, just, get a tackle for crying out. I think you started to see more discipline. And if you want to see that continue, then the continuity of Jeff Ulbrich is how you get it done. And hopefully the continuity of a Nate Ollie will be how you get it done as well. But yeah, I think we all believe that it speaks highly of Jeff Ulbrich that, yes, Arthur Blank made a strong nudge, as you mentioned, Maria, but that ultimately Kevin Stefanski saw that, hey, Arthur Blank is making that nudge because at the end of the day, you got a guy that can do wonders. And when we saw it first and foremost this past season. Now, great on what we've seen from the head coach and who Kevin Stefanski has potentially put in place in a number of positions. Good work, Matt Ryan. But now you got some work to do to put your other guy in command in the triumvirate. Who's it going to be? We'll talk about that next up. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you could have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. And you can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's also a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. So you just have to file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you for making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. So, Aaron, the Falcons have requested interviews with a number of candidates for that general manager opening. James Lipford, the AGM from Houston, Andy Weidel, the AGM from Pittsburgh, Josh Williams, the director of scouting and football ops for San Fran. Ian Cunningham, the AGM for Chicago, who of course came in to interview for president of football as well, and Mike Bradway, the AGM for Kansas City. Now, Matt Ryan is going to conduct those interviews this week, but when you hear about that list of candidates, which one of these candidates do you think will be the best fit for the Falcons?
Well, it's hard to say, but you liked hearing that they're going to do their due diligence on the GM search, because early on it seemed like it was just going to be Ian Cunningham. Now, for me, Ian Cunningham still remains probably my preferred candidate, just based off of what he's done and his background from Baltimore and Philadelphia and Chicago. But Eddie Weidel also has a background from Baltimore and Philadelphia, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, Mike Bradway also was in Philadelphia as well. James Lifford has local connections. So I think all of these candidates make a ton of sense in terms of their background and whatnot. But, just because Ian Cunningham was already kind of my front runner, like I feel no reason to, switch it up at this point in time. But I think all of these guys can make a legit case for being really good options for the Falcons.
Yeah, I think the same, Aaron. If you are a viable enough candidate that Arthur Blank brings you in for consideration for president of football, that top spot, then there's no reason to think that you wouldn't be able to manage successfully that GM role. Only thing I have to disagree with you on is don't do it. Andy Weidel, reconsider AGM for Pittsburgh. Not a good look, but I'll keep talking about that in a minute. Jarvis, I will ask you to weigh in on these candidates for GM for the Falcons.
Can we just stop playing around? We know who his doggone spot going to. It's gonna be Ian Cunningham. Come on now. Like we talk about relationships and all this stuff. Like but when I heard that Ian was the guy that they were strongly considering, so I'm gonna go back to the reporter world, in the reporter world, like he was the strong candidate. I was kind of excited about it, right? Because you think what Chicago has done, and Ryan Poles, he's kind of a lightning rod up there in Chicago. With some of the moves he's made, he's failed at some moves, but he's hit. When he hits, he's hit big. So I think that being around that and understanding when to do that, I feel like Ian probably has a good grasp of how he would handle situations. If you were to get that GM spot or sit in that seat or move one seat over, right? And that's what it's all about when you are that right-hand man to the general manager. So I feel like Ian probably, in my eyes, is the best candidate or best fit for the Atlanta Falcons, because when you look at how the league views it, hey, Matt Ryan making all the decisions. So it's probably going to you're taking certain candidates out of the fold when especially when like guys who've been in the league and they've been general managers, those guys aren't going to even be considered, I feel, because they know that how the structure is. Like a lot of those guys don't want to work up under that. So you're going to have to get a first-time guy. And I feel like Ian Cunningham would probably be that guy that would be the best fit for the Falcons going forward.
Yeah, and just to qualify this, in case any Steelers fans are listening or our guys from Locked On Steelers are tapping in, like in all seriousness, when you look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing in their front office, juxtaposing that to what the Chicago Bears are doing, there's like legitimate reason for my concern there, because the Chicago Bears found themselves in a similar situation as the Steelers did, right? Where you have to make a decision on a franchise QB, and you have to then put the pieces in place for that franchise QB to succeed. That's really where success starts and stops for an organization, right? So when we look at Ryan Poles and by default Ian Cunningham's decision to go with Caleb Williams, but then they went out and said, okay, Caleb, we're going to get you some help. Joe Thuney, I repeat, Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs, a world champion, to be a part of that O-line. And then what did he come and do? He dug a center out of the mud from the Falcons. That was and we saw this season some of those challenges of not having the Drew Dahlman here for the Falcons. And then you look at what they were able to do on the defensive side of the ball, making moves like getting Montez Sweat mid-season and then getting help for Caleb Williams in guys like Rome Odunze and getting him a true 1-2 punch. When I look at the Steelers, I don't see that kind of progression. I don't see that understanding over the last 3 to 5 years about how critical that quarterback position is, and then how critical it is to put the pieces of the puzzle on the field, but also on the sidelines. And I think that that's why you look at a guy like Ian Cunningham and you say, well, Josh Williams, hey, awesome work because of what's going on in San Fran. So you got to give him a world of credit. James Lipford, we love the moves that Houston has made in the draft and as well as in free agency. And obviously Kansas City is constantly retooling. So those guys, that those front offices have shown themselves to be viable. But I think that Ian Cunningham, like you said, the relationships and what Chicago was able to do. I mean, they're really one move away, one player going the right route and then figuring out what to do at the end of the route. They're one play away essentially from going to the NFC Championship after being bottom of the barrel in the NFC North for forever. So Maria, I think Jarvis, Aaron, I think you guys are kind of right in that. Maria, Ian Cunningham, it might be more his job to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems that way. And this by no means is me banging on the table for Ian Cunningham. I think it's hard to do that when you've never seen someone be a general manager before. But it does really make a ton of sense given what Aaron illustrated, the relationships between Ryan Poles and Matt Ryan. Ian Cunningham is right there with Ryan Poles, who has done such a phenomenal job in Chicago. My sister's lived in Chicago for 13 years. And so I tend to follow what the Bears are doing probably closer than most. And it's an awesome thing for the city to see that franchise and that organization actually be good at football again. And you have to give Ryan Poles all the credit for that. And so I think learning from somebody like that, who's been able to take, as you mentioned, a team that's been in the bottom of the barrel all the way to a team that's going to be back, by the way. It's they lost and it is what it is, but they're now going to be, at least I believe, consistently competitive here moving forward because of the pieces in place. And when you have a guy like Ian Cunningham learning directly and sitting directly behind somebody like Ryan Poles, I think that is just critical knowledge you can't really get anywhere else. And two, you have a head coach that has experience. And so we had talked about it before. If you have a first-time president of football and a first-time general manager and a first-time head coach, that is a lot of firsts that you're banking on all working out. So I think just having some kind of veteran leadership in that room, as in Kevin Stefanski, definitely helps. Matt Ryan's got Ryan Poles on speed dial. And so I think if there's anything that he needs or, hey, can you help Ian with this in the transition, whatever, I think that it does make a ton of sense in that regard. And look, I think you guys are right too. It does take a certain kind of candidate to come in and sign off on reporting to Matt Ryan. That's no shade to Matt Ryan. It's just because of the nature of the job. He's a first-time president of football. We have no idea what that's going to look like. So I think for very experienced and tenured general managers, they look at that and they say, maybe not at this point in my career. But for a guy like Ian Cunningham, who's been trying, by the way, he's been a finalist in the past for other general manager positions. This could be the perfect opportunity for him to finally show, hey, I was a finalist, never got it, but this is why I should have.
Yeah, and the GM role is kind of a quirky one. Rarely do you see a GM go into another GM position. Almost always those GM openings are filled by like assistant GMs, if you will. So yeah, if you're going to go with one, Maria, to your point, maybe go with one that has that depth of knowledge, that depth of experience, and has just really seen how a front office can slowly but surely turn around a franchise. Let me ask you three this couple of quick questions. First and foremost, if for some reason it doesn't work out with Ian Cunningham, from that list of candidates that have been interviewed so far, who's maybe your second choice? Or do you have one?
I would probably go with Josh Williams because the one thing that I've always liked about San Francisco in the Kyle Shanahan era, guys up front, right? Like they prioritize the guys up front, offensive line, defensive line, and being able to have some consistency there up front and understanding how to build football teams. And, John Lynch running things over there and him being a former player, like he understands that as well. So I've always admired what they've done over there. Especially with Kyle and dealing with all those injuries, and they still seem to find guys to just come up in there. They got Brock Purdy and Mr. Irrelevant, who ended up turning into their starting quarterback for the future. Like that's the type of thinking that I would like to see, just from a so when you talk about, Ian Cunningham being able to see what Ryan Poles is doing, I wouldn't mind seeing what Josh Williams could do as a GM, because he's been in a building that has so much success.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when we look at what John Lynch has been able to do, you got to think that somebody that's been in that organization and somebody who's been under that, we talk about head coaching trees, but there's a GM tree as well, a front office tree. That would definitely be, Jarvis, a good tree, if you will, where you get someone in Josh Williams that can prove from the track record of the 49ers that he could do the task at hand. Anybody else? Maria, Aaron, you guys got anybody that would be maybe that runner-up should the Falcons not get Ian Cunningham?
For me, I would have said Andy Weidel, just because his resume looks a lot like Ian Cunningham's, but then T talked me off that ledge, so I'm like, I don't know.
Scared to take it, huh?
You're welcome.
Blow it all up.
So, I guess maybe Mike Bradway, having that Eagles Chiefs background, two very successful organizations that have been consistently successful. And so bringing that sort of hopefully stability and consistency, I think, would be something very welcome here in Atlanta, or consistently successful. They're consistently mediocre is the problem with the Falcons, consistently successful.
I think a lot of those guys have really impressive resumes. Obviously, Josh Williams is thought to be one of the other front runners in this general manager search. And Jarvis, you mentioned a couple of different things that make a lot of sense with him, and him spending as much time as he has within the 49ers organization, 14 years. It's a long time to learn from a lot of different people. He's got a proven track record of scouting expertise, and that's something that the Falcons definitely could use. I mean, every NFL team could use it, but especially right now. Matt Ryan has a lot of, I think, football acumen that people don't give him credit for because of the Stafanski hire. I want everyone to trust what Matt Ryan is doing. But when you pair him with somebody who has been at the forefront of scouting these players for almost 2 decades, I think that also would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like those choices as well, but I'd probably go with Bradway too, just because he was a guy who had also been with the Eagles for so long that Andy Reid thought highly enough of him to recommend that he come over and join the Chiefs organization under Brett Veach. And we know what Brett Veach has been able to do and probably what they'll continue to do as a reload. Guys, that Stefanski has a press conference coming up on Tuesday. You got to think that because they pushed that press conference so far out, that's probably going to be a press conference to introduce the head coach and the GM. No?
They're hoping. I would say that they're hoping to do that.
Yeah.
You don't really want to have
different
press conferences in the matter of a month that we've been having. So I think it does make the most sense to, introduce them in tandem. So hopefully that happens.
Yeah.
They're going to wait till Aaron Freeman goes to sleep on Saturday, and then they're going to announce it.
Yes, that's probably how it's going to go down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
That's exactly what's going to happen.
You already know, Aaron.
Yeah, and then Aaron, you can wake up Sunday morning and see my text. That was so Falcony. And you'll know exactly what it means. Anywho, we say hello again to Jeff Ulbrich, but we say bye-bye to another coordinator. And boy, oh boy, it's really interesting to see where he's going. And if that's the right fit, we'll talk about that when we come back. This episode of our Squad Show is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If you need to hire someone for a show, let's say, maybe you go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what you need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. And instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates better and faster. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Using Indeed sponsored jobs, listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. So, Jarvis, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have decided that instead of seeing Zack Robinson on the opponent's sideline, they want to see them on theirs. So they announced that they hired him as their offensive coordinator. Are you happy that Z-Rob was able to land on his feet? But maybe more importantly, was that a good move for the Bucs?
I mean, I don't like to see people lose their jobs.
Yeah,
I would never be a guy that delights in people being fired. And so for that reason, I feel it's cool. You'll be able to land on your feet. But from a Falcons perspective, just looking at it, it don't matter if he's a fit or not. I know how inconsistent he was as a play caller. So I know Jeff Ulbrich is probably licking his chops. You're like, oh yeah, can't wait to see what OZ Rob does down there in Tampa. And I think that, but the thing about it is the difference between the 2025 Falcons and the 2025 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh my gosh, those guys have so many weapons. They got like 30 wide receivers that can catch the football. Ibuka, McMillan, Mike Evans. Those guys are loaded. So he has a lot of toys to play with. So there aren't going to be any excuses. And he had an experienced quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Yeah. He like that guy. Just like we talked about how Stafanski has to work. My man, Zack Robinson, it better work, bro. Otherwise, Todd is out of there because he clean house, and that's the last step before you get fired when you clean out all your coordinators. So,
well, Marie, in addition to Zack Robinson having more weapons in his wide receiver room, I think that maybe the number one weapon is Baker Mayfield and revenge, because sometimes revenge is a dish, as the saying goes, it's better served cold. But ultimately, when you look at that wide receiver room, and you can throw his tight ends in there as well, because K-Dot is that guy. But ultimately speaking, Zack Robinson, OC to the Bucs. Thoughts?
I just have this weird feeling that Zach's going to go over there and just like ball out. It's the Falcons way. It's literally the Falcons way. To watch an offensive coordinator who created just such a vanilla offense here go to the Bucs and just freaking ball out. I swear that's going to happen. No, I'm with Jarvis. Obviously, I think if any of you know anything about me personally, I never want to see anyone get fired. And I'm happy that Zach got another job. I think he's a great human being, and it just didn't work in Atlanta for whatever reason, or a lot of reasons we could go over that I don't have time for. But I think, Tampa is a good fit for Zach for a lot of different reasons. He especially has a relationship with Baker Mayfield, who that's a good thing. If you haven't seen Baker Mayfield's Twitter, it's good to have good relationships with that quarterback, because he'll throw you on the bus if you don't. They have a good relationship together. He I think fits a lot more of what Tampa has in place. But you're right, Todd Bowles, this is his last option. And so Zach, I hope this isn't the case, but he may be finding himself out of a job again if Todd Bowles is fired in a year. So, it's got to work for him. It's another high pressure situation for Z-Rob, but he did some things to Tampa, whether you like it or not. If you remember the Kirk Cousins historic game, Tampa's sitting over there and thinking, wow, we want that guy to be a part of it. Not talking about Kurt, talking about Zach, obviously. So, I've just got this weird feeling that all the stars will align. What'd you say?
I said they can take Kirk. That's fine. Y'all can have him.
Someone will, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'll be Tampa, but someone will for sure. I I just have this very weird feeling that stars are going to align for Z-Rob in Tampa.
Yeah, and it might be that way, Aaron, because hey, you get a couple of up and down years here in Atlanta. Third time, maybe that's the charm.
Yeah, this is setting up well for my conspiracy theory that Todd Bowles will get fired after this season. They'll hire Mike Tomlin to be the head coach. They'll get Raheem to be the defensive coordinator, and they'll keep Zack Robinson as the offensive coordinator, and we'll just be like, oh, whatever. But I think, as everybody has pointed out, like, if you're constructing the perfect team for Zack Robinson, this is probably Tampa Bay. That when you look at his success in the first half of 2024, so much of it was just kind of, hey, Kirk, Darnell Mooney and Drake London is open down there somewhere. And then you saw that not work in 2025 because the Darnell Mooney disappeared and Drake London was hurt for half the year. And the quarterback situation was the quarterback situation. And then in the back half of 2025, Zach was like, oh, like, maybe we shouldn't be running pistol all the time. And maybe we should get under center. And the Falcons had one of the best play action offenses in the NFL for like the last 8 weeks of the season, compared to the previous year where they had the worst play action offense in the NFL. And so if you can basically marry the early 2024 with the second half 2025, and then you now have, as Jarvis pointed out, the deepest wide receiver room in the NFL. So you don't, even if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin go down, like, hey, they'll be fine. They have weapons, right? And you have a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who's basically a better version of Kirk Cousins. Like, you get all the chaos that you get with Kirk Cousins, but when Baker's on, he's playing like a top 10 quarterback. It's like, this is kind of the perfect sort of situation for Zack Robinson in Tampa. Now, will that lead to the level of success that they need in order to save Todd Bowles' job? We shall see. But as everybody else has stated, like, Todd Bowles was just looking at, this Zack Robinson-led Falcons offense, cooking him 4 times the last couple of seasons. They have been the consistently team that has been the team that has been able to put up points, I think averaging like 29 points against this Bucs defense across these last 4 games. So Todd Bowles is like, hey, man, if you can't beat them, join them. So, it makes sense from their perspective, and we'll see if it works out.
We will see. So we see comments too that shots have been fired, so to speak. D-Les may have sparked something in Baker Mayfield, but I tell you, definitely shots fired. Definitely there was always some enmity there between Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski, of course, from Baker's days in Cleveland. But man, Jarvis, I mean, it's interesting because you never kind of know. Like I said earlier, revenge is a dish best served cold. So it'll be interesting to see, now that you have Zack Robinson, who may know some, and granted it's a new staff, but may know some machinations about the mindsets of the players, because the players are still potentially going to be the same for the Falcons defensively. And hey, they still have the same coordinator, so you never kind of know. But Z-Rob from the Falcons to the Bucs with an angry Baker Mayfield, like, man, this might actually be some must-see TV come 2026, the fall of 2026.
Can I just say something about Baker Mayfield?
Sure.
Can I?
I think.
PSA.
I'm nervous.
Baker, sir, I suggest you stop searching for chips to build on your shoulder. It's tired, man. It's tired. You literally got D-Led's Twitter up here blowing up because you're up here talking about Kevin Stefanski didn't doggone text you.
What? Do you think that Baker Mayfield follows D-Led, or he searched his name?
He searches his name, of course. Absolutely. I just say he searches for chips on his shoulder. Of course he searches his name on Twitter. He got nothing to do. Like, and I am so serious what I'm about to say right now. Dog, do some inner work, dog. Like, find out why you're still searching, because you've been highly successful, sir. You were the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, granted, you bounced around for a little bit, but you landed on your feet in Tampa.
But I don't know, Jarvis, because from what you hear, Michael Jordan, like, players just obsess over something.
You take that back. I don't want to put Michael Jordan and Baker Mayfield.
No. What I'm saying is,
okay,
hear me out. What I'm saying is players at every level of good are always talking about something that they use to motivate them, something that is bulletin board material. So is he really that different than the average player that says, oh, so-and-so said I couldn't do it. Oh, so-and-so said I wasn't going to make it. Oh, so-and-so said I was a sorry quarterback. Like, it seems like this is what athletes do. They just look for bulletin board material to motivate them. So Kevin Stefanski, you're up on the bulletin board.
But we're in 2026 though.
Doesn't matter. He's still playing. So he's still looking for new ways to motivate himself and activate that Baker Mayfield.
Jarvis, it's similar to, I had a couple, I'll just tell you, like, I kind of get it from Baker's perspective, because I've had a couple of people tell me I would never make it in this industry, tell me I would never anchor a sportscast in my life. I remember their faces. I remember the days they said it. I remember all of that. And I still talk about it. I'm 12 years into this and I still talk about it, and I still know exactly who they are, one of which is on national television. And every time I see them on TV, I think about that moment. So I get it.
But here's the thing. Okay, so we getting a little deep here. So I'm cool with it. Let's ride with that. So I got a chance. So when I was in high school, I was in, I forgot what class I was in. The teacher was kind of like going around the room and was like, hey, you're gonna go to college, you're gonna go to college, you're gonna go to college. And then he got around to me, he was like, you'll never go to college.
Who would do that? That's so insane. I hate that happened to you. That's so dumb.
It burned me up. Absolutely. As a 17-year-old, oh, you doubted me? Oh my gosh. Chip, here we go, Chip. Put that chip on my shoulder. Don't even worry about it. Got my degree, played ball, played a little pro ball, and I'm a professional broadcaster. Yep. And here's the thing. I got a chance to actually meet him, because come to find out, he owned a business right down the street where I used to live in Decatur. And I walked in that doggone building and I looked him dead in his eye. I could have said, yeah, man, I'm that mother blanker now. You know what I'm saying? Like, you probably seen me on TV somewhere. No, I didn't do that. I was like, hey, how you doing, man? How you doing? You doing all right? Good to see you. I didn't know you on this spot. Man, it's cool, man. I'll continue to support, because I've done the inner work. I've done the inner work on my life.
Yeah.
I understand that people say things and they don't really think about it when they say it or when they do it. And that it happens. We're human beings. We all make mistakes. But bruh, like you said,
so Jarvis,
no, like, yeah, like you need to deal with it, dog. Whatever that is, deal with it. Because I'm tired of it, to be honest.
But see, I think the difference between you and him is generational, right? Because your generation says you can keep the chip on your shoulder for motivation, but you don't have to let the outside world know. And I don't think of Michael Jordan or any number of players, they don't tell us normally until after the fact. The things that we just said, like they'll tell us after the fact about that ninth grade coach that not only cut him from the team, but this is what the coach said when they cut him. And I think that's the difference. Like Baker just took it a step too far, where he took it to social media and decided
blowing D-Led phone up. You can't even sleep. You know what I'm saying? At night.
Right. Whereas we're from the generation of killers move in silence. So you just strike. You don't have to speak on striking. Put it in instead of putting it in words. Not that I'm wishing this against the Falcons next year. Not that I'm wishing this against the Falcons next season, but Baker Mayfield, show and prove. Like, stop talking. If you really got this thing against Kevin Stefanski, then just go do something. So, okay, Aaron, it looks like you're laughing too much to make a comment, but chime on in before we finish. Before we wrap this foolishness up.
It's just funny to be thinking about D-Lay's phone being blown up. I don't know. That got me. It just got me.
Oh my God, yo.
Well, on that note, thanks to our everydayers and the Orlando Ledbetter for making the Falcon Squad show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. Our Falcon Squad show and Locked On Falcons are both part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will see you next time.